Hey everyone, it's the end of 2024, and so following tradition, I'm going to give a rundown of some of the big things politically that have happened over the last year. It has been a very interesting year, I think it's fair to say. From elections, not just here in Ireland, but over, over abroad, especially in the States. We've had controversial laws like the hate speech laws here in Ireland. Um, we've had referendums here in Ireland that have really shown things to be not as pro government as they thought. And there's been a couple of small things in my own personal life that I'm going to get into as well. So, first off, the Irish elections, and there have been quite a few. We've had local, European, and general elections. So the local e- elections took place alongside the European elections. So for those of you who don't know, the local elections are for local councillors. The I will say the elections kind of went kind of how I expected them to go. Well, there was a little bit of movement towards independence, but not that much. And this is the issue I have with kind of voting in elections here in Ireland. Because the people in Ireland are very, for lack of a better word, clannish when it comes to voting. They'll vote for people kind of that they know, and even if they're not trustworthy or they've done a bad job, it's hard to get them to go to vote for someone else. And that's happened actually in my own family as well. There's quite a few people who vote like that as well. So me, I don't pay that much attention to the voting. I do vote, but it's almost voting for the sake of voting. And every single election, I kind of have the reaction of I'm wasting my time. Every single time I go to vote in an election, that feeling of I'm just wasting my time doing this gets bigger and bigger every time we go and do it. Um, I think some of the issues when it comes to the elections, with the election results anyway, is we keep getting more of the same. And the reason being is that there's not really that many good alternatives. I mean, look at them. You have Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and Sinn Féin. Those are the three main parties. Like Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael won't do a good job. Sinn Féin won't. And look at the other parties. You got the Social Democrats, you got Labour, you got People Before Profit. Like the selection we have is not good. And even parties, and the reason being is that a lot of that selection are really on one side of the political aisle. They're all left. Now I know Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are described, they're always described this way as centre-right parties. And I think on the economy, I think that's a fair assessment. But when it comes to kind of social and cultural issues, which is something I tend to focus on a bit more, they're a lot more in agreement with the regressive leftists. They're a lot more in agreement with Sinn Féin, with Labour, with People Before Profit. And that's why stuff like the family and care referendums and the hate speech laws get so much support because they all agree with each other essentially on those things. Now, speaking of elections, there is one election I think has to be talked about, and that is the re-election of Donald Trump to the US presidency. Um, it was an incredible political comeback, and I will say that was the second time I stayed up because remember I'm here in Ireland, which means that all the election counting takes place in the middle of the night. So, and also I had just for behind the scenes for you guys, I actually had a early shift the day before. So basically, I had an early shift where I started at 4 in the morning, and then got a nap, then woke up, got something to eat, and then went got everything set up because there was a bit I wanted to do in terms of getting video stuff set up, in terms of getting kind of the maps and the sources set up and all that stuff. So yeah, the day after the result came through, I slept almost all day. It was worth it though, I will say, because it was, and this is one of the reasons why I like the U.S. politics a lot more than Irish politics, and that is because U.S. politics is a lot more interesting. Irish politics is just boring as hell. There's very few things that you really can really stick your teeth into here. While over there, it's much more engaging. Now, I think it's fair to talk about Kamala Harris, and the reasons why her campaign failed. First off, now, and I think this is an understandable thing, well, because a lot of people have been kind of saying the reason our campaign didn't go so well is because it started very late. You could make that argument, except the issue is she was running for president already. That's why basically they were able to switch her through the way they did. There's also a lot of people saying that the Democrat Party clearly aren't democratic, given how they chose her as their candidate, even though she didn't actually get any of the nomination votes. She got the nomination, even she was the nominee, even though no one voted vote for her in the nomination elections, in the primaries. Sorry, and that was that's an argument that I think is pretty true. But they know when it comes to rigging stuff. I mean, think about the 2016 election. They screwed over Bernie Sanders for the Democrat nomination. I also think the biggest issue with Kamala is that she was Biden's vice president, and basically, even though people wanted to, they wanted to separate Kamala from Biden. They couldn't because if it's the vice president of Biden, it's safe to say she's going to be a continuation of Biden. And she even said it herself when she was asked when a lot of the issues that Biden has caused, would she change any of the policies that he implemented? And like thinking about it, no, I wouldn't change them. So that's a good indication she's going to be more of the same. Now, one of the things I didn't like about her was that she was just really fake. I've talked about this in a previous video, but yeah, it's she. There was. I don't think you could come across as less sincere, less genuine than she did. I think it's almost like she was trying to compete with Hillary Clinton on that. So coming back to Ireland, one of the biggest pieces of legislation that there was so much controversy about was the hate speech legislation. Now, thankfully, the hate speech part of it was dropped, which is a good thing because that was really thought crime. That's really what it was implementing. And also the fact that they couldn't define anything made that bill really bad. Now, the rest of the bill passed. Now, what that means is that a crime can be increased if it was basically motivated by hate, which is also not that well defined, and that's where another issue with this. So it's still going to be manipulated. I think they're gonna, instead of saying, "Oh, you having hateful stuff on your phone, or you saying something that's can be deemed hateful by someone else," they'll try and say it that, "Oh, you can this that this crime happened because you motivated it by hate." I think they're going to try and angle it that way, which I hope they don't, but it's a really strong possibility. And also, it has been said by a lot of ministers that the hate speech part of that bill, which they dropped, will probably return under the new government. Now, I just received word that Helen McEntee will not return as Justice Minister, but I can pretty much be confident that whoever takes over the Minister for Justice will also try and bring that back. So yeah, that the fight for that for free speech in Ireland goes on. I think one area where free speech really showed up the government this last year, especially, was the two referendums that took place. Um, there were two referendums: the family referendum and the care referendum. Now, I've made a couple of videos on this in the past, but essentially was they were trying to redefine what a family was in the constitution into what they defined as durable relationships. Now they didn't actually define what a durable relationship was, so that didn't really work out. And the care referendum was trying to remove the word mother from the constitution because the constitution recognizes that the work that women do in the home is a vital part of the success of society. I think that's a fair thing to say. But there was so many lies about that part. Well, they were saying that the like people who were trying to remove it were saying that, oh, the constitution says that a woman's place is in the home. That's not what it says. All it says is that the work that women do in the home is of great benefit, is vital to society, which you can't say is wrong. And I think the reason why the two referendums failed, and they failed horrifically, was the government and the NGOs who really pushed these. They didn't understand the public the public beliefs around these issues. And it also, I think they thought that the public would just be very complacent when voting on these. They thought that they'd just vote to change or whatever. Because there have been some referendums in the past where it has been like that. There was one where they were they went to remove blasphemy from the constitution. It succeeded, but I think a lot of people forgot that referendum was going on, and plus that referendum, by the way, was also going on along with an election. So you go into a vote for a candidate, and you were also voting in that referendum. So I think that's where some of the complacency was with that. But also that was one of the referendums that had the lowest turnout in the history. Now the family and care referendums. Also, the thing with the care referendum as well is that it and they've done this before where they're trying to manipulate the female voters by the date they're putting it on because they put it on the 8th of March, which is International Women's Day. And interestingly enough, they did the exact same thing for the abortion referendum. And it's like, it's weird how the two of that they were both on the same day. That was by design. Now, the government and the NGOs have said they didn't understand the public's point of view on this because they thought that anyone who disagreed with these changes were unreasonable, or it's only the far right that disagrees with these. It's like that's not how it is. And besides, they use the term far right so often that it's lost its meaning. But they have a similar problem with regards to the public, kind of the public reaction and beliefs to immigration and towards freedom of speech and hate speech. So the government, when it comes to elections in Ireland aren't really a good indicator of kind of where the people in Ireland are pointing to in terms of their beliefs. But when it comes to referendums, when it comes to their reactions to certain laws and their reactions to policies, that's where it shows up. And especially in the recent immigration protests, where people have just been really, really sick of having to take it that we're implementing this policy, we're we're putting this on your community, and there's nothing you can do about it. We don't care what you think, and that's kind of how the government has done things, and they're kind of realizing that that just doesn't work anymore. Now, one thing that happened over in the UK, which I think was a great, it was a great thing to see, was the release of the CAS report. Now, the CAS report was a detailed report on the effectiveness of medicines and basically it went at transgender healthcare for minors, particularly puberty blockers, hormones, and surgeries. And it found that the evidence that they were effective in treating the gender dysphoria was very, very weak. Now, this is something that those of us that have been following the kind of, especially the D-trans community, have known for a while that it's not that effective. And they're so quick to diagnose it, that they're not actually treating the issues that are there. And I think it's actually quite sad because these people need genuine help, genuine support. But what they've been getting has been the affirmation that they've been getting about what they believe hasn't been helping them. Now, we've known that for a while, especially with the suicide figures, because I think it's 41% the suicide rate for transgender people. But what they don't actually tell you, and they always actually, when they talk during these therapy sessions, where they're affirming the gender of the person, is especially with the parents, if it's underage, if it's an underage patient, that they'll always go, "Do you want that? Would you prefer a trans child or a dead child?" They always angle it that way, which is actually very inappropriate because the figures, if you look at it, the suicide rate doesn't actually change before and after surgery. Now, a lot of people will say that's because they're bullied, but the numbers don't actually pan that out either because studies have shown that kind of whether their gender identity has been affirmed or not isn't a factor. The suicide rate still the same rate, regardless of whether their gender identity is affirmed. So that really does mean that it's something more to do with the gender dysphoria that makes you suicidal, not the fact that people are bullying you because of gender dysphoria. No. Does that mean that bullying isn't a factor in some cases of trans suicide? No, I'm not saying that at all. But saying that it's the primary factor, the primary cause, is just not brought out by the evidence. And I think it's really showing the CAS report and the results from it are really showing now. Well, puberty blockers have been banned all over the UK, including in Northern Ireland. And there's a Supreme Court case over in the US around the trans healthcare for minors. Now, a lot of people will probably go at me for calling it healthcare. Fair enough. But when I say healthcare, I mean the gender affirming care practice that's there, which is, from what I've seen, a lot more damaging than beneficial. We need to help these people through science supported methodologies, not ideologically supported methodologies, because they just don't work. A couple of things, kind of personally, in my own life. I've kind of been, I've been kind of trying to figure out things in several different ways. Um, I've learned over the last year, especially, I've learned really to kind of stop and think better, if that makes sense. Well, if there's something I need to give particular thought to, I take more time with it rather than just talking out loud, out straight about it. Because Because I've always known when I do that, I tend not to give a particularly good argument. I've gotten better at that. Um, and I hope to keep developing that in the future. So, how was your guys' year's been? Uh, is there any things you think I've missed? If so, leave a comment in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what you guys think. It has been a mad year, and I'm gonna be honest, I suspect 2025 is gonna be even madder.